following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.
Hey folks, this is the Black Nature Boy, Scoot Andrews, and you're listening to the Insider's Edge podcast.
Hi everybody, this is former WWE superstar Al Snow.
Mel Bennett.
C.W. Anderson.
Sean Oliver.
My name is Eugene.
And you are watching the Insider's Edge podcast.
Now get on the
train.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network in conjunction with Blue Wire Hustle. I am your host with the most on the West Coast, California in Fury, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say the same thing each and every time. But hey, at least I wear a different shirt each time. I'm wearing my Sonic Youth shirt here today, but I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk to a wrestling legend from the state of Florida. He is an ECWA Hall of Famer. He's won many championships in the region, and he's won many championships in other places as well. So without any further ado, it's my honor to introduce to you all the Black Nature Boy himself, Scoot Andrews. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, man. How are you today?
Yeah, doing fine, and I'm drinking some wine. So
very nice.
11 p.m. at night. So, I like to partake in a little sip or two. But it's great to be speaking with you today. And I've spent the last hour and a half watching as many matches of yours as possible.
God.
And I like to do a deep dive and do a lot of research. And I guess the first question, Scoot, on every single show we have is how did you become a wrestling fan when you were a young man?
Well, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. Championship Wrestling from Florida came through there every Thursday night. Watching Gordon Soley every Saturday at 1 o'clock. I just kind of got roped in at a very young age. I had a neighbor across the street who was a huge fan, and they went every Thursday night, and I went with them. And it just became our weekly routine going to watch Dusty Rhodes, Jack Briscoe, Buddy Colt, all the older names from Championship Wrestling from Florida. And I would say in a year, I probably missed 5 Thursdays in an entire year. So, yeah, that kind of did it. Huge football fan as well, but that was my thing on Thursday nights, and I just grew to love the sport, man. It was unbelievable. And then, the guys I was watching, Dusty, Jack Briscoe, like I said, were larger than life, man. Steve Kern, and all these people I've actually, other than Jack Briscoe, God bless his soul, I've met most of these people now, which is, that was unbelievable. So yeah, that's what kind of wrote me in, and I've been hooked ever since.
Oh, that's cool, bro. It really helps with your wrestling fandom, the fact that the guys that you watched on television actually just perform like a few miles down the road, every single week. That's crazy because, I live in Perth, Western Australia. So, the opportunity to see your heroes perform live was just a very, very rare thing, unless there was some sort of random tour of, guys a little bit over the hill, which was still mind-blowing for me. But, that certainly helps, especially with the fandom. So you're also a football fan, but you love wrestling. You're growing up, you're a wrestling fan. What's high school like and all that? What's your life like with your friends? Do you all love wrestling? You all watch it together?
So yeah, in high school, it was all about playing football and running track. I did have a group of friends who were big into it as well. So I think maybe I'm not going to tell you what year I went to high school, but my senior year in high school, I think is probably when WCW started to take over. I'm thinking, that's a long time ago. So they weren't quite in Jacksonville every Thursday like they had been in my youth. But there was a group of us that went when they were there, and we watched it religiously. So yeah, my high school years were all about playing ball, running track, lifting weights, trying to get a college scholarship, and chasing girls. Pretty much, that was it.
we had very similar upbringings there as we got into our teenage years there, Scoot. I chase girls. I play basketball though. And I had a group of friends that like wrestling as well. So I always see those similarities with me and the guests that we have on the show.
Sure.
So, okay, you want to get into college and you want to get that scholarship. What happens with all that? And did that take place?
It did, actually. Had a little adversity with 4 games left in the season. I broke my hand. Ended up getting a cast, and my season was over, and I thought I was done. So the next Friday, I sat and systematically cut the cast off my arm and taped it back on so it would be softer. And I proceeded to play the next 4 games with a broken hand with a soft cast, which is probably why I have arthritis in my wrist now. But I did end up getting a full ride to Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. They're in the Southern Conference now. Played there for 4 years, and always a wrestling tie-in. The Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium, the parking lot butted up against the parking lot for my dormitory. And Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling used to film TV in the Spartanburg Auditorium. So I got my wrestling fix about once every 2 months. Got to go watch, TV tapings for Mid-Atlantic, and then you're watching, Dusty again. Then when I finally got to see my namesake, if you will, Ric Flair, every time they came in, the 4 Horsemen were huge during that point. And
Wow.
A couple of times we were able to kind of be security backstage as football players. Obviously the police did their job, but they recruited a few football players to police the parking lot and then like guard certain doors to stop people from going in. So a couple of times I got to guard the door that went backstage, and the workers would come out every now and then just to smoke a cigarette, get some fresh air, and I actually got to meet some of those guys for the first time there, which is pretty cool. So it's always a wrestling tie-in, no matter what happens.
I try to get off track and talk about something else. It's straight back to wrestling.
Always.
Always back to wrestling. So when was the point? Okay, this is the exposure you've had to the business. You've been now working a little bit of security, but when do you finally just get the chance to be like, did you go to someone and say, what do I have to do to get into the business? How did you figure out? Because back then it would have been very difficult to figure it out because there weren't thousands upon thousands of wrestling schools around the place like there are now. It was a much more protected business as well back then. How did you get yourself into the business?
So I graduated, played ball 4 years, graduated, obviously no professional football in my future. So I went back to Jacksonville and got my first real job, and I'm trying to scratch that athletic itch, playing softball, playing flag football, and it's just, is what it was. So coincidentally, I joined a fraternity when I was at Wofford. Our football team took over a fraternity, and I get home and come to find out a lot of my high school buddies who were into wrestling, there's that tie-in again, were in the same fraternity. We didn't even know it until I got home and realized we're in the same fraternity. So I started, hanging out with those guys, and we decided we were going to do a rush event to recruit new fraternity members, and we were going to put on our own Pi Kappa Phi wrestling show. So we went out to find a ring, and obviously we didn't know what in the blue hell we were doing. But we found a local promotion in Jacksonville that was putting on a show that week. The weekend we decided we were going to do it. So 4 of us went to go watch that show and then inquire from those guys about renting their ring, right? So I think it was called Renegade Championship Wrestling at the time. We get there, we find the owner. We talked to him about renting his ring. I'm pretty sure he gouged us. We didn't know any better. But he agreed to rent us the ring. So we watched the show. It was a decent show. It was pretty good. After the show was over, I asked that individual, do you guys, I watched it. I was like, I think now obviously it was independent wrestling. So some of the guys weren't as big as they were at WWF at the time, WCW. I was probably about 180 pounds at the time. So I asked him, how would I even get into this if I wanted to do this? One of the workers, Hot Stuff Damian Lee, big on the indie scene around the Jacksonville area. He was a tiny guy as well, but he heard me ask the question, and when the owner kind of him and hawed and walked off, trying to protect the business, he came over and goes, "I'll train you." Like, okay. So he took me out to his little hole in the wall, little farm looking thing out near Green Cove Springs. There's a ring underneath like an outdoor shed, and him and his manager just basically gave me one-on-one training for 6 weeks. Now, granted, we had already done the fraternity show and did a pretty decent job at it. I would have to say, I look at it now, it looks stupid as hell, but it felt like we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. So I kind of had an idea of a lot of the moves. Not to say that I knew what the hell I was doing by any means, because I did not. But had a pretty good head start on it. And 6 weeks later, I made my debut against Damien. Obviously, I wrestled him for like the first 8 months of my career on every local show in Jacksonville, which is probably about once a month, once every 3 weeks. And then it just kind of took off from there. And then I met Hack Meyers from ECW a couple of years later, and that's when it really started to take off. So that's a long-winded story, but that's how I got in.
Wow, that is cool. So yeah, it was September 24th, 1994, the first match with Hot Stuff Damien Lee. Look, I before I get to my next set of questions, you brought up the name Hack Meyers, and well, if the name Hack Meyers gets brought up, then I need to ask you about him. He's I think he was absolutely tremendous at what he did. I've seen a lot of his early ECW work. What was it like when you met him, and how did he help you out along your journey in wrestling?
So I actually met him over the phone. He somehow got my number from another wrestler. He had seen me doing a show in Palm Coast, Florida. I can't even remember what the name of the promotion was, but he saw me there. He had a show booked at Florida Championship Wrestling, the new version, down in Miami, which was being promoted by Bill Brown. And he called me up and said that the guy he was supposed to work, who he had previously worked in ECW, broke his leg and could not make that trip. And of all the guys that he saw on the show, he thought he could have a decent match with me. And he asked me if I was available to go down to Miami. And I'm like, go further than Palm Coast, like Daytona area? Hell yeah, I'm in. So, I didn't really know who Hack Meyers was at the time. I'd heard the name, but it was the early stages of ECW when he was in there. And I didn't really watch ECW that much in Jacksonville because it wasn't on TV there very often. So when Hack pulled up to pick me up to head down to Miami, he rang my doorbell, opened the door, and there stood a 340-pound man with a mohawk hanging down in front of his face, a beard down here. And I'm like, what in the hell did I get myself into? Now, again, I'm only about 190 at that point, and he's 340, and I'm like, oh, God, what did I do? But we drive from Jacksonville to Miami, 8 hours, 7.5 hours. He had no AC in his car, so the windows were down. And we proceeded to just talk wrestling the entire 8 hours. We get down there, and we had a female wrestler in the car with us too. Her name was Riptide, I think her name was, and she was actually going to be working Molly Holly, but I forgot what her name was prior to that. But we get down there, and me and Hack are in the semi-main event. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? The place has got probably about 800 people packed into it. It's hot. It's
Wow.
It's what you would expect from a major independent, and I'm peeing myself. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm not ready for this. But we went out, and he took great care of me. He put me through 3 or 4 tables, and we had a great match. It was very easy to play babyface with Hack because he was such a great heel, and that started a friendship, and that started my ascent, I guess you could say, in professional wrestling. He basically took what Damien taught me and took it to 10 levels higher. I would never ever have been able to be on WWE TV if it had not been for Hack Meyers. I never would have made it, been in the Super 8. I probably never would have left the state of Florida if it weren't for Hack. He ended up being in my wedding. He ended up being goddad to my kids.
Wow.
He is, with all of his flaws that he had, he was deep down one of the best human beings you ever want to meet. And he wouldn't show that part of himself to everybody, but you know, I've only dropped to my knees crying 3 times in my life, and that's when I lost my father, I lost my grandparents, and then when Hack passed away. That one hurt me, but I owe him everything in the wrestling business. So
I understand, bro.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And I didn't realize, you know, how close you two were. All I saw was through my research that he helped train you. I didn't realize it was such a tight friendship. So that, like, thank you for sharing that, bro. That's really, really appreciated. And
Absolutely.
and it's kind of the first time he's been brought up on the show. So that's nice that the first story is incredibly heartfelt. Another question I had, you know, because I just want to know, how did you get the name Scoot Andrews? Where did that come from?
So Scoot actually is my given nickname. I don't know if that's such a thing as a given nickname, but my family named me Scoot because I was super tiny when I was born. I was born 2.5 months premature.
Oh, wow.
So it started out as Scooter, but by the time I became 10, 11 years old, it had been shortened to Scoot. So that is my God-given nickname by all my friends. If you talk to anyone prior to me meeting my wife, they would not even know who Andrew was. They only know Scoot. Everybody post-wife knows me as Andrew. So it went through a couple iterations, Scoot Anderson, Scoot, I forgot, there's a couple other last names, but it just somehow ended up being my nickname and my first name, plural, and we went from there. The Black Nature Boy was a thing that came because my absolute love of the work of Ric Flair. Early on in my career in the Damian Lee days, you know, I did the woos and the chops, and I would do the 3 steps and face plank. But, you know, I kind of figured, working with Hack kind of helped me understand this. And then just, you know, traveling all over Florida, seeing so many different workers and performers, I kind of realized, you know, I got to make my own version of this name and not try to be like Ric Flair.
Right.
I was thinking about dyeing my hair blonde, to be honest with you, but glad I did not do that because it's falling out anyway. It probably would have fallen out a lot faster. So yeah, Scoot Andrews was actually a version of my nickname and my real name. So that's how that came about, and that's how the Black Nature Boy came about.
Right, cool. Well, you've now just answered my next question, was when did you just decide that the world needed a Black Nature Boy? And I was looking through old footage and I was like, damn, I was hoping to see him come out with some really extravagant coats and robes.
Early on, I did have I bought a robe from Chris Nelson when he was off and on doing like one of the Heavenly Bodies with Vito DiNucci. He had an older version of one of the Heavenly Body robes, which I would wear every now and then they became the Heavenly Bodies again. So I gave it back.
Right. Yeah.
But I would wear that every now and then I started, you know, I kind of wanted to show off. I like to use baby oil to look bigger, and when you wear a robe, it comes right off.
Yeah.
So that morphed into sequin and glittery vest, but finally I just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm tired of buying these things, so I just went with nothing at all. But yeah, I did use the robes for a little bit, but you know, again, it was much like Ric Flair, so I was like, I'm gonna just, you know, go my own way here and go without the robe.
No, fair enough. And you got to accentuate those muscles with the baby oil there, bro. I mean, it's
especially when you're not very, when you're only 210 pounds, you got to do that.
So speaking of, you know, of Florida and the scene back then, can you tell me what the Florida wrestling scene was like in the mid 90s? You know, I mean, you've got ECW, you've got WCW, you've got the WWF. I'm sure there's a few other things going on around the country, but what specifically was that scene like during that time?
So there were a handful of really good promotions back then. There was Florida Championship Wrestling in Miami with Bill Brown. There was Future of Wrestling in Fort Lauderdale with, Bobby Rogers. There was Florida Wrestling Alliance or Association in Fort Pierce with, what was his name? Yeah, Gummit. His last name was Anderson. Cliff Anderson, Cliff Sheets. Then you had Renegade up in Jacksonville, and there was CCW in Melbourne with what was his name? God almighty. I wasn't prepared for all this. Bill Weaver. So those were like the major loops in Florida. And then there was one in Winter Haven that was run by Al Hardiman. Now, when I first started, the one in Winter Haven was probably, the houses were 1,500, 800 at a minimum.
Wow.
Renegade was about 300, 400. Florida Championship was about 5 to 6. Future Wrestling, same thing. And then I came upon one in Tampa called IPW, which ended up being my home promotion once I moved to Tampa. And that one, we had a little small hole in the wall called the WrestlePlex. And we packed as many people as we could into that bad boy. And I think at capacity with the doors open and people all the way out into the parking lot was probably 300, 400. But all of them paid what they said they were going to pay and had decent houses, had great workers. And the good thing about Florida is pretty much all the workers were the same. There were a handful that didn't leave their promotion and go to others. But, the few of us that did them all, we pretty much did them all together. So we always had people to ride with. But it was a good time, man. I can't, a lot of people have bad things to say about their time on the indies and how it was, hard work with no pay and, just not very fun. I had a blast, dude. Great guys, great promoters, great fans. It was a good time.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, no, I've had a few people on the show who have been not so happy about their days on the indies and all that. But this is something that just came to mind just now. Do you agree with the whole thing that if things with the top companies aren't going so well, does that trickle down and affect how things are going in the indies? So when the WWF is at its hottest and WCW, they're getting all these ratings, people probably locally want to go out and see some wrestling. Does that mean the house is always bigger because the top companies are doing well? And when business is down with the top companies, does that mean business goes down for you guys as well?
From what I've seen, yes. I'm very lucky in that I broke in the 90s, the whole Attitude Era in WWE or WF at the time. WCW was still pretty hot. So I came in at a time where, the big guys were doing well. And then transition, I got out. You never really out. I don't know. I don't want to use the word out, but I stopped wrestling a lot in 2007. Or was it 2005? 2005, 2007, right around the time. 2005 is when my youngest was born. It was 2005. So I think that was when they all started to dip a little bit. So I was in hot and I got out when it started to dip, which is, I guess, straight up luck.
Yeah.
But the IPWs, the FOWs of the world, and IPW and NWA Florida merged at one point during all that, which was a really hot time here in Tampa. They had their core 200, 250 fans that would always show up no matter what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
But, every now and then IPW, NWA Florida would run a big show. We had a place called Pinellas Expo Center. And, they would bring in a couple names, just, get those extra WCW, WWE folks. I know we had one with, 1-2-3 Kid, X-Pac. We had Kevin Sullivan a couple times. I think we even had Bubba the Love Sponge, which was crazy. But we grew some big houses at the Pinellas Expo Center for IPW and NWA Florida. And we kind of used that as like a pay-per-view type scenario where we used IPW and they had TV at the time on the CW. to build up to those shows like once every 6 months. And that was when it was really fun because it was our own little homegrown thing. I had a say in the booking. I was their top guy, even though we had so many other guys they could have chosen. Ron Nemi decided I was going to be his top guy at that point. And then that is when I kind of got into the eyes of some people and how I ended up in the ECWA Super 8, which then got me into doing dark matches and, squash matches for WWE. So it all paid off in the end, but yeah, it was good times.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And I had a little funny thought when you mentioned that you got out just as things are going down. That means you can't get blamed for it going down. It's
Very true. Very true.
So please tell me a little bit about the ECWA Super 8. This seems like something that's a real important part of your history and your time in the wrestling business.
Yeah. So Kevin Kelly, the whole Black Nature Boy name caught Kevin Kelly's eye. And he was good with Chris Nelson. I don't know if you know who Chris Nelson is. He was in the Heavenly Bodies. Him and I did Jerry Springer together a couple times. But Kevin was helping Jim Kettner book in ECWA. So it was right about the time of the Super 8, and Jim Kettner's nephew was Jeff Peterson. I don't know if you remember that name. Jeff Peterson passed away at a very young age here in Florida, but he was from up in Delaware where ECWA was. So Jeff was going to be in the Super 8 that year. A guy named Jet Jaguar, who was at IPW, who signed with WCW, was in it, and they needed like one more spot filled. And Kevin saw a tape of me with Hack, and he was like, "All right, that's the guy we want him." So I'm in. So I didn't really know what to expect. It was my first time pretty much leaving the state of Florida to work. So I didn't realize how big a deal the Super 8 was. I mean, I knew who had been in it prior, and mostly everybody who had been in it prior was either on WCW or WWF at the time,
Yep.
So I'm thinking, all right, well, it'd be great exposure. Okay, I'm in, let's go. So we fly up, Kettner picks us up, and all 8 of us are staying in the same hotel. We, get up Saturday morning, have breakfast, and Kettner lays out the plan for the show and then informs me that I'm going to make it to the finals. And I'm like, whoa, what? Okay. So I got to work with Trent Acid first, which, God bless his soul, was, probably one of the better matches I've ever had. And now granted, you got to remember that Florida was very old school in the way we worked. And then I'm going up north where everything's high spots and, a lot of flipping and flopping and all this running. And I wasn't used to that, for one. Yeah. I was used to working as a big man, even though I was only 210 pounds. So I get up there and me and Trent have a great match. And then I realize when I'm done with him that, oh my God, I got to do 2 more matches and I am absolutely gassed right now. So I got super lucky in that Chad Collier was my second opponent. And I don't know if you know who that is, but
I've heard the name for years. Yeah.
Yeah. He was trained by the great Malenko. He was trained basically in Florida and he cut his teeth over in Japan. So he was more methodical, slower paced. So that was what I needed for that second match, which was, thank God. And then I end up in the finals with Christopher Dames.
Yeah.
Who basically got me through the last 5 minutes of that match by moving my body around because I was absolutely done. I couldn't even freaking feel my legs by the time we were done. But he is such a great talent that you look at that tape, you would not even tell that he was basically moving me where I needed to be every single time. And then that forged probably my second greatest, I say third greatest friendship in the business with me and Christopher Daniels. He was supposed to be in my wedding as well, but he got booked in Japan. I told him if he canceled his booking in Japan, I would kill him. So he went over there and did his, forgot what that damn thing where he wore the rice on his head.
Oh, the curry man.
Curry man. So he went over there, but he did send a very nice present, and he should have been in the wedding, but he had to go make a living, so that's good.
Of course.
But me and Christopher ended up being really, 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 really good friends. And if you look over my shoulder here, there's a picture that he sent me, me and him in the match in the Super 8 when I retired. And basically it says, every aisle you walk, you were a champion. Thanks for being a great friend. Christopher.
That's nice. That's cool, bro.
He's a great guy. And we still catch up every now and then. But I would say my two greatest friendships in the business were Hack Meyers and Christopher Daniels.
Awesome, man. And obviously Christopher Daniels certainly made a big name for himself, and I will bring him up again a little bit later on because it's essential to this story, that's for sure. In my research, 9th of May, 1999, you work on Super Astros for the WWF against Super Loco, who we all know is super crazy.
Yeah.
So I've seen a few episodes of Super Astros. And obviously interesting concept to grab that, I guess, that Latin audience. Was this the first time that you had worked in the WWF? As far as my research is concerned, it is, but please tell me if I'm wrong.
Man, your research is absolutely spot on. That was my very first match with the WWF.
Wow.
I think our agents for that match were Savio Vega and Ricky Santana. And Super Crazy could not speak a lick of English at that point. He was straight from Mexico at that point. So as we are kind of going through what we're going to do on TV, they had to translate everything to him. And then whatever he said, they had to translate to me. And then all I can think in my mind is if anything goes wrong, I'm not going to be able to talk to this dude and figure out, how to cover this up. So it had to be perfect. Side note to that, that very first WWF match just happened to be, and this is, people talk about karma and all that stuff, but it just happened to be in the Jacksonville Coliseum that I used to go to when I was a kid, my entire life. And as I walked out down that ramp and just looked out into the arena, I'm just like, holy crap. I can't believe this is where I'm starting. My WWF matches in the place where it all began, which is crazy that it even worked out that way. But we were going to have a decent match. Didn't really need to talk any spots through in the ring because everything went well. And he's a hell of a talent. He was very, very good. And it was cool because I had a lot of people in that arena who knew who I was. So there were a lot of scoot chants. And as I got backstage, a couple of agents, Tony Gurria being one of them, walked up and was like, man, you're pretty popular here, huh? So it was cool to have my name being chanted during that match. But I still have the VHS tape from that match. And it's, obviously all the announcing is in Spanish, but yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's great, bro. Yeah, we had Ricky Santana on the show maybe about 6 months ago. Great guy. And, so what I'm going to do here, Scoot, is I'm going to name off all of these dark matches or matches that you did on TV with the WWF, one after another, up until we get to about June of 2001. If there's a story there, tell me. If not, we'll move on.
Okay.
But this is for me. This is the nerdy part of me coming out, wanting to know the ins and outs of every intricate detail. I really love it. 11th of April, 2000, a dark match against somebody you know very well, Mike Sullivan on Sunday Night Heat. Please, is there a story there?
Well, anytime Mike Sullivan's mentioned, there was a story. Him and I were tag team partners for years. Yeah. He was Marvelous Mike Sullivan. I was Black Nature Boy, and our name was Naturally Marvelous. Yeah. We carried the IPW straps and the NWA Florida straps for off and on for 2, 3, 4 years. Wow. Still really good friend. And that was actually in Tampa. And I tried out a new finish in that match that I stole from Christopher Daniels. And it got over, so I was happy. But yeah, it was good times. It was here in Tampa. That was my probably my second match, I think, with WWE.
Okay, cool. I'm doing well so far with the timeline. 12th of June, 2000. Now this is 2 months later against Jason Lee on Jakked, or WWF Metal, depending on where it aired. Do you remember that one?
Yes, it was in Milwaukee, and I was supposed to work someone else. And 10 minutes before we went live, maybe 20 minutes, they changed it to Jason Lee, and we had about 15 minutes to put something together. So we just went out there. That was probably the only TV match I've ever done where we just winged it.
Right.
Because normally they want to know, it's got to be laid out a certain way for your agents. And the agent was like, it's on you guys, just go. And we went. I was probably the most nervous I've ever been in a WWF.
Wow. Excellent. 20th of November 2000 against Al Snow, again on Jakked. I just watched this about 40 minutes ago. Any stories on working with Al?
Super nervous because I knew he was such a great worker, and Hack had talked so greatly about him. Hack was there that day. He did another dark match, so he introduced us. Great guy, man. Funny as hell. He was cracking me up. I'm glad they probably cut out the parts where I was laughing, but he was killing me, man. He is awesome. And just so you know, when he gives you head, that thing hurts.
I was gonna say it looked pretty
freaking rubber, and he lays it in with that bad boy. I was not ready for that.
And that is how he won the match. You have the distinction of saying that I lost after being smacked in the head with heads. So
absolutely,
and it's an honor. 22nd of January 2001 against S.A. Rios, again on Jakked.
Yeah, that was in Lafayette, Louisiana, in the Cajun Dome. And I don't know if you can tell at the very beginning of that match, I freaking blew a spot, and we covered it up pretty well. But I blew it, and every time I see him to this day, I apologize. But we covered it up, I think. He was fun to work with. He was super fun. He went to, I don't know if you watched that match, but he did a dive over the corner post.
Oh, it's crazy when he does that. Yeah.
He didn't get enough air, and he was about to land short. And at the very end, I had to throw myself out to save him. And all the agents and Kevin Kelly and those guys were praising me for, sacrificing to
make sure he didn't.
Yeah. I'm like, it was a reaction, bro. Like I said, let me save this guy. No, it was. And we ended up having a decent match, even though I blew the first spot. But here's what it is.
Yep. I got two more before we take a break from me asking you about all these TV matches. 12th of March, it's nearly 2 months later, you face Crash Holly on Jakked.
That was in the Staples Center in LA, which was freaking awesome.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to see that monstrosity of a building. It is absolutely beautiful. He was super easy. He's a hell of a nice guy too, man. He was awesome. If I'm not mistaken, Molly Holly was probably.
She was with him. Yeah.
So big old full loop story. Molly was big in Florida. She made it in WCW, moved on to WWF. She ends up being a part of our match. So that was pretty cool to work with her after knowing her back in the day when she was super young, and traveling with her. So it was cool. Very, very cool. That was fun.
That's cool. Big shout out to her, because the cream rises to the top, and you could tell with her, there was no stopping her. She was going to be great one day, especially when I saw her early in WCW wrestling in a dress in bare feet, and still just no problem at all. Went out there, killed it.
Had to be hands down the nicest person on the planet. I mean, I know you probably hear that all the time, but she is still currently one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, which is great to see people like her make it, because I mean, she had no ill bone in her body. She's just that nice. Nothing but great things to say about her.
Excellent, bro. Yeah, no, every time I hear anyone talk about her, I've never heard anyone say one bad thing. And the last one before I get to the big question that I want to ask is 23rd of June, 2001, you and your good friend Christopher Daniels on Jakked take on Kai and Tai.
That was freaking hilarious. Those guys are just they're great workers. Little side story to that match was Chris Daniels and I did a dart match the night before in Tampa.
Okay, that was the match I watched earlier as well.
Yeah, so we did that match, and then we jumped in the car, drove down I-4. This, Tampa and Orlando about an hour and 15 minutes apart, one highway to get there. And we had a flat tire on the way there. And I remember Ivory and a couple of other people, as we got to the building, asked us if that was us on the side of the road. And we're like, yeah, why didn't you stop there? But they didn't realize until they had passed. And luckily, we had a Florida Highway Patrolman stopping, jacked the car up, helped us change the tire. We hooked them up with 2 tickets for that night. And we went and worked those guys, but they were so much fun. And at the very end of that match, they used the camera angle to kind of cover it up, but not Taka, the other one, Funaki.
Yep.
He was supposed to backdrop me over the top, and he asked me which shoulder. I told him left. So as I, go into the spot, he gives me his right, and he barely gets me over. So I have to force myself over the top rope. I was going to do the full, Randy Macho Man, hold the rope, go all the way over, land on my feet.
Yeah.
But I didn't get enough momentum, so I had to basically throw myself over the rope somehow, which you look at the way they did the camera, you can't really tell. But and to this day, every time if I run into Funaki, he goes, I'm sorry.
Really?
Which is awesome. But that match was so much fun. Those guys were great. They were freaking amazing. And then when the match was over, I just remember Arn Anderson coming up to Chris and I and just saying, he's a huge fan of tag matches. And I don't know if he was our agent that night, but he came up and told us that was one hell of a tag match. So if Arn Anderson's telling me that, I'm going to take it. I wish I had an iPhone back then so I could have recorded it and say,
absolutely. So here's the big question that I want to ask. Look at all this. Look at all these matches you've had. It's so rare that one guy gets featured on these shows so often and doesn't end up getting signed. I know Kevin Kelly was obviously a very big supporter of you, but at this point, you're getting all this great feedback constantly. Why has Scoot Andrews not been signed by the WWF?
So it's a weird situation. I had a real job at the time, as a corporate sales trainer, which I got that job because I was a wrestler, because the guy who hired me was a huge wrestling fan.
Okay.
So I am the selling skills trainer for a national telecom company, and we have offices in every major city in America, right? So I basically could go to my boss and say, I want to do a selling skills class in Milwaukee on Wednesday, but I'm going to go out on Monday and do Raw and SmackDown and then do the class on Wednesday.
All right.
And he would basically go, all right, go ahead. So I would fly out, expense the trip on work. Well, first I would call Dr. Tom Pritchard and see where he had openings. Okay. And then I would book the trainings around where they had openings and where he could get me in. And I would basically fly on my own dime, the company's dime, and do Raw and SmackDown, do my training class, fly back home, and then do indie shows on the weekend. So it was a great gig. But I think that screwed me in the end because they knew they could get me anytime they needed me. And this is from Kevin's mouth. Basically, they're like, why sign him when we can book him anytime we need him? So it kind of, and Vince was not really into smaller guys back then. He had Crash and he had Spike, but that was it. Everybody else was pretty big. So I was lucky enough to work all over the country for him, not under contract. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where some of the boys backstage wondered why they were like, I thought you were under contract, dude. You're in LA last week. Now you're in Milwaukee this week. I thought you were with us. Yeah. But I never had a chance. So he did give me, Kevin Kelly hooked me up with a tryout with WCW and Billy Fives, and I went together for that tryout. Sarge, I don't know if you've heard the stories about Sarge at the power plant. Oh my God. So basically, my tryout match was on spaghetti legs from start to finish because we had just conditioned for 3 straight days.
Oh my gosh.
And it was the absolute, I mean, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but it was the shits. It was horrible. So did not get hired. And Kevin just said, you know what, we're just going to continue to use you wherever you can go. And it worked out. And then, you know, when you start getting booked on WWE shows all the time, you start getting calls from independents all over. So
Yeah.
I ended up being Midwest heavyweight champion for Midwest Championship Wrestling out of Chicago for 2 years, working with people like CM Punk, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels was there as well. And that was good. And then I got to go out to APW out in California and work for Roland Alexander. And then there was people out there like Mike Modest and I forgot the other guy's name. But I actually ended up meeting the big Indian guy from WWE. I can't remember what his wrestling name was for Vince. But, oh my God, he was in The Longest Yard with The Rock.
Oh, the Great Khali.
Yeah, Khali. I met him when he was a student in California out there when we were doing shows, and he was just breaking into the business. And he was probably about 200 pounds at that time. And
Really?
that's all. He was beanpole. But I met him, and then next thing you know, he becomes a big star, which is pretty cool. But yeah, at the end of the day, you know, I had a really good paying job, and I'm one of the few who, you know, this wasn't my sole income source.
Right.
So yeah, not getting signed, did it hurt me? Yeah, it did. I mean, I really wanted to be, but at the end of the day, I was still able to see the country, leave the country a couple times and work, and live my dream. So at the end of the day, it worked out for me. You know, most people, if they had my non-signing type career and that was their sole income, probably would not be able to look at it the same way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I can totally see that. It's like they always say, have something to fall back on if this doesn't work out. And you had that there, but in a way, it almost hampered your chances of getting the thing that was your goal of being signed by the big company, even though you was working there just as much as almost anyone else. That is,
and, you know, I also think what may have hurt me is, you know, I didn't go to a reputable school. Like I didn't get trained by Killer Kowalski. I didn't get trained by Steve Kern. I didn't get trained by the Great Malenko. So I think that may have had a little bit to do with it as well.
Right,
So.
I get you. So like, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you're no pun intended, you're one of the kings of the indies, you know, at this time, you know, and you talk about all those guys that were in the indies at that time. You see CM Punks, your AJ Styles, your Christopher Daniels, your American Dragons and all that stuff. One thing I want to talk to you about before I bring up this King of the Indies tournament with Christopher Daniels, your point of view from being someone who is so popular within the indie scene in the United States. ECW and WCW go out of business. How does this affect the indies in your scene, and also affect the efforts of yourself and others to get signed to the WWE? Because now there is two rosters of people, some getting signed, but some wanting to get signed, but have to go to the indies to wait their turn. Now, all of a sudden, you might be, let's say, for example, 12th in line to maybe get a contract. Now you get pushed down because you've got Tommy Dreamer and, you know, all these people from WCW wanting jobs as well in the big company. How did that affect the indie scene? And also, you know, well, these guys are going to get booked on the indies. So now some guys are going to get pushed down the card a little bit because you've got guys from television come to the indies.
On the indies, it wasn't, I mean, for me personally, it wasn't a big deal. Well, it wasn't a bad deal because a lot of the guys that were being pushed down to the indies, I ended up working with. So I stayed at the top of the card, and it was against those guys.
Okay, cool.
Which was great. But, you know, there were some people that were the top of the card or maybe, you know, semi-main after intermission type guys that ended up, before intermission guys. So I could see where that could have hampered their careers. But at that time, WWE was still using extras and, had 4 spots on every show for the guys to come in and do dark matches and do, job matches for Jakked and Metal and Thunder or whatever else we were on. So that didn't really hurt us. They just had too many people up there doing their thing. But for the guys that were coming in to do dark matches and stuff, they still used them. So that didn't affect us at all.
Okay.
It actually just gave us different people to work with. Which was,
yeah, no, that's cool, bro. I just wanted to see your insight on that situation, because I wasn't sure whether or not it was a difficult process or an easy process of all these people now looking for work on different areas of the country. So yes, you had we've spoken already about the Super 8.
yes.
In Newport, Delaware, but February 26th, you again face Christopher Daniels at the APW King of the Indies tournament, losing to him in the semifinals this was on December 30th.
Yes.
The first one was February 26th. But another tournament and another loss to Christopher Daniels. Is Christopher Daniels the kryptonite of the Black Nature Boy?
Starting to see a trend here, aren't we? Yeah, he was my kryptonite outside of Florida. But in Florida, I was his kryptonite. So that was always the only problem is the matches we did in Florida and the Indies didn't have the national exposure that the one that we did in these tournaments. But man, you talk about just absolute joy to work with, man. He's just his mind for the business, and just to be able to put a match together with him is just it's the easiest thing. It's like riding a bike. He's unbelievable. Our matches, I don't think we've ever had a bad match ever. I would say our worst match was that Super 8 final, because I was not used to that pace of work. Yeah. And then after that, IPW started bringing in the guys from the Super 8 to come to Florida to book, Scoot Andrews versus Christopher Daniels, and all the indie marks all over Florida showed up to watch that one. But, I got used to that style of work, and, working with him and AJ Styles and Low Key and those guys, man, it just, I was able to keep up by the time we got to the King of Indies. So we had a better match. But, you get in one of those tournaments, Christopher Daniels going to the finals. It doesn't really matter who's on the card. So it is what it is, man. You know your place. You know your place in this business. But always being put with him was such a honor, because people knew they were going to get a good match between the two of us, which is awesome.
Yeah, cool, bro. Well, I'm getting to the point of the show now where it's time to talk about Naturally Marvelous with Mike Sullivan. And I just want to know if you had any stories on you guys working together as a team and feuding with the Strong Brothers, and any memorable angles that you guys did, for anyone out there that might be wondering what Scoot Andrews and Mike Sullivan in Naturally Marvelous did together.
So it started out with us being rivals. Obviously, that's the best tag teams on the planet start out with two guys that were huge rivals. He was a consummate babyface. He used to be Freedom Rider, he is actually a veteran of the United States Navy. So he came up with the gimmick Freedom Rider. He wore face paint like Sting. So he was a natural babyface. Then I was the natural chicken shit heel back in the way. So we had good chemistry together as working against each other. And then we became a babyface tag team at the time. We got over pretty well. And then we got into a feud with the Strong Brothers. And one of those Strong Brothers is Roderick Strong, who is on NXT now as part of Undisputed Era, but I guess they just broke up. He's a great kid, man. I love that guy to death. Side note, we were trying to set up a match in Ring of Honor or Evolve, and just so we could have one more match together, but we couldn't make it work. And then he gets signed and goes away. But we do this tag match, and Ron Nemi decides he wants to do this double switch angle where we become the heels and they become the baby faces, even though they're the heels. So we do this tag team. We do this steel cage match, which I'm pretty sure you can probably find out there somewhere. And God, this is so funny. I mean, it's not funny. It's actually scary. But not Roderick, but Cedric had never juiced before in a match. So Christopher Daniels was on the show that night, and he showed, I don't know, probably giving away too much here, but everybody knows how we do things now. But
yeah.
There's two gigs you can do. You can do the small one where you do this, or you can do the big one where you do that. And that's how Daniels did it, was the big poke and then move on. Less scarring and just boom. So we do the tag, we throw him in the cage, Cedric hits the pipe, boom, does it. But he has the poke gig, but he did this.
Oh no. Oh no. Shit.
When I tell you, I can still smell his blood today. I mean, we're all covered in it because he had to go get stapled. It was bad. It was really bad. He finished the match. We kept trying to take it home. He would not take it home. He goes, we got to finish. So at the very end, we win the belts, and then we just go bat crap crazy and just start beating them senseless. They have to send out, referees, agents, baby faces, heel. They can't get us off of them. And that was our big heel turn. So now all of a sudden, guys that the fans hated, they had sympathy for, and I mean, they had huge sympathy. And then Cedric almost bleeding out made it easier after we beat him down at the end. And then we became the pretty much top heel tag team in Florida at that point.
Right.
And that was about the time we merged with NWA Florida. And then that's, we had a bunch of unification matches, us and the Shane twins. They were the Johnsons on TNA, and they were in Gemini, I think, for WWE for a while. So we had some pretty good matches with those guys. And I ended up with a bald head in Naturally Marvelous because we did I forgot what it was. It was they leave town if they lose. And I somehow got roped into shaving my head if we lose.
Okay. Yeah.
Side story, my wife wanted my head shaved. My hairline was receding. I saw a match on WWE where the light hit the top of my head and I could totally see through all my hair and just see my scalp.
It's like an X-ray. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do a hair versus whatever match, but we're going to lose and I'm going to shave my head because I'm scared to do it myself. So I'm like, if I'm going to do it, they're going to do it to me. Yeah. So we lose it. They shave it. And now I'm still bald, 20 years later or whatever. But great matches with those guys. Mike Sullivan is, he was the yin to my yang in Florida. It was good times being with that guy. And we pretty much beat up everybody in Florida as a tag team. So yeah, good times.
Oh, awesome, bro. Awesome. And look at as far as going bald is concerned, I know how you feel, bro. I had 20 years, I had long hair, and in October.
Oh yeah. I see it. The peninsula broke off from the island and you got to shave it off.
We are bald brothers, and only we understand each other. Other people don't understand one another. My friend.
Absolutely.
Okay, February 23rd, 2002. Big day in the history of wrestling here. It's the first ever Ring of Honor show. ROH, the era of honor begins. Xavier defeats Scoot Andrews at the show. You're on the first ever Ring of Honor show. This is, an iconic kind of thing here because Ring of Honor still, nearly 20 years later are still going, and a lot of companies don't last that long, but they're still there. Must be very important to you and your history in wrestling to have been a part of Ring of Honor. Can you please tell me about what that show was like and I guess your feelings towards, those early days of Ring of Honor when you were a part of that?
So, when you're on the first part of the very first show of something that is now what it is, you didn't know what it was going to be when you were on it, obviously. It kind of came out of ECWA and Rob Feinstein, however you pronounce that, booked several guys from ECWA to be on this show. And it was tied very closely to RF Video, if you remember that back in the day. That RF Video stands for Rob Feinstein. And he used to videotape everything in the Northeast. And I guess he was a part of it with Gabe for the Ring of Honor thing. And then just, the people that were on it were pretty much all the big guys up in the Northeast. So it's just another Northeast show to us at the time, I guess. We had to do little different things like shake hands at the beginning of the match, shake hands at the end of the match, because it was era of honor. But it was still low key. It was still Christopher Daniels. It was still me. It was still AJ. I met Xavier there. I met Danny Maff and Rodney Mack. I think the Briscoes were there. So it was like all the guys we already kind of knew. And there were some guys from up in Boston that I had not met. They were great workers. And it was just a good time, man. It was a great time. Now, caveat, wrestling fans in Philadelphia are like no wrestling fans anywhere. Yeah. Even to this day. So that was my first experience wrestling in Philadelphia.
Really?
And let me just let you know that if you don't get over in Philly, they will absolutely bury you during your match, which is crazy. So I was super lucky that I had a awesome finish and I had really good music. So I was over as soon as I came through the curtain. So that was awesome. And then I think Xavier and I had our first match together. And then I think my second match there was against Daniels. Again, another shocking thing. We did what we did. And I think those two matches got me over with those guys. But I just saw some people get buried by those fans, man. Like it was bad. It was really, really bad. But if you got on their good side, you were good to go. And I was on their good side and I was happy to be there. And I think I did maybe 5 or 6 matches with those guys. And then, they just took off. That was Gabe's early days booking. And I just watched a special on him on Vice TV, I think. Yep. It's called The Wrestler. The series is called The Wrestlers, but it was about it was about Evolve, and it was Darby Allin, I think, was on it with him, but they were just talking about his rise as a booker, and now he's like booking stuff and doing stuff with Triple H. So he just had a great mind for putting how he wanted the show to look, and he was very, very. And I was used to this at WWE, but I was not used to this in the Indies. But he was freaking meticulous about everything. But he was amazing. He was really, 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 really good. So I was honored to get a chance to work with that guy. And now he's blowing up, and I can just say I knew him win, which is cool.
That's cool, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate those people in booking that like to cross their T's and dot their lowercase J's. I just
absolutely.
I just think it's vastly important that you're meticulous, because I did wrestling 2010 and 2014. I did it locally here in Perth, Western Australia, and the people booking, just not everyone is a creative person.
No.
You can learn how to wrestle by getting trained by someone reputable, and you can go back to your home city and start your own group and buy a ring and put it in a gymnasium and have shows, but that doesn't necessitate you being creative, where you can write for characters, write for performers, write a proper show that threads from one show to another perfectly, and the stories always make sense. So a lot of the time with some wrestling companies, you have someone in charge that isn't a creative person. So it's good that there is a company like Ring of Honor, or now Evolve, somebody like Gabe Sapolsky who does that. It's one of the most frustrating things for me as someone who's creative and was a wrestler. That was one of the most frustrating things, was having someone in charge that just didn't really know what they were doing. And I don't know. I just wanted to say that. I just think it's important.
No, you're right. You're right. And I will tell you a quick little story in Jacksonville, that Renegade Wrestling that I started with. We ended up getting the naming rights from it, and we did a TV show probably for 6 months. And we were on, I think we're on the Fox station in Jacksonville, and I and Hack booked. So I had to do finally my first opportunity with the book, doing a TV show that was getting decent ratings. And we were filling up high school arenas all
That's
over
good.
Jacksonville.
Yep.
Which was fun. And that is where my faction, the name of a faction that I started there, and then I carried it with me all the way through. And I think it still actually is a thing, but it was the Alliance of Defiance.
All right.
So it was me, a guy named Jason Hex, who I think is still maybe wrestling down in Jacksonville, his tag team partner, and I forgot who the fourth member was. Oh, it was Dynamite Slick V, who used to wrestle with Larry Hamilton's All Black Federation there in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And then the girl who managed me my entire first part of my career, her name was Dawn. I forgot what her wrestling. I think it was Miss Venus was her work name, but we were just really good friends. I was kind of like a second dad to her kid. She worked at Hooters, and that's when we first met. And then I was like, "You want to get into business?" She's like, "Sure." And we got great heat all over Florida. So she was our valet. It was the four of us. We were basically poor man's Four Horsemen. But I'll never forget, writing the TV and our very first TV show. We were in the National Guard Armory in Jacksonville, and we wrote it in where, they're going to introduce us to everybody, and they roll up the back door. We pull into the building in a limo. The four of us get out. She gets out. We cut promos. We get heat. It was unbelievable. It was so much fun. But then I ended up having to write TV for 6 months, and I had a whole new respect for promoters and bookers, and writing TV is nothing like just booking a show. That's easy.
Of course. Yeah.
You got 10 minutes, go do your thing. This has to be 8 minutes to this point. I need you to hit this cue. We got to do this. We got to do this. It was crazy. So I learned a lot about booking. I learned a lot about creativity. Hack had a great mind, so it was super easy. We did a lot of provocative stuff from like ECW days when he was there. And we morphed it into some traditional stuff. And, I took bits and pieces from everywhere I'd been and put it all together. But we had some fun, man. And the money man ran out of money. We had a wrestler get hurt because the money man decided he wanted to build his own ring instead of renting one. So dude hit the ropes broke. He hit the floor. Yeah, he had life out of there, and then all hell broke loose, and then it fell apart. It always falls apart. That's the thing about most promotions; it always falls apart. That's why you say like Ring of Honor still being around is a true feat, because everything usually falls apart at some point on the indies. But now I guess they're not considered an indie. But yeah, man, that takes a lot of work, and for Gabe to still be doing it at a high level is mind blowing, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
you run out of ideas at some point, right?
Absolutely, man. And just thinking about it, you have a TV show taking place, the amount of minutes something needs to be, and something goes over. So now you have to remember, okay, that was 2 minutes over. So we're going to have to find out how we're going to cut that up here. And then the next thing might go short. So that might help you out. But then the next thing might go 10 minutes over. You're like, where are we going to find this time to edit this and post? That to me would be a nightmare.
It was. And then I was the freaking champion. So I had to worry about what I was going to do in my own match. Doing all this, I had to worry about my match. But it was worth it. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
That's great, bro. Another thing that's something that I have to bring up, August 7th, 2002, you wrestle somebody by the name of Quiet Storm in a dark match for NWA TNA. I think it was their 8th pay-per-view at the time, but you have a dark match. What goes on here? Why, you got this opportunity. Why was Scoot Andrews not working more TNA after this?
I have no clue. We had a great match. And it was in Nashville, as a matter of fact. I remember it like it was yesterday. But, we had a good 10-minute dark match. Went well. Crowd was in it. It popped. It was great. And I never heard anything else. So I don't know. I have no clue what happened there. None whatsoever.
Right. Because to me, and I want to bring this up because, you're such a big part of the indie scene in the United States at this point, and there's so many people that you've crossed paths with, like a Christopher Daniels, like a CM Punk, like a American Dragon, like an Amazing Red. Those types of guys, they're getting a bit of a run in TNA, but Scoot Andrews isn't getting to be a part of that whole. These young guys, X Division, whatever you want to call it, this like all these people that no one's ever seen before, unless you saw AJ in WCW, but all these people you haven't really seen before, and they're killing it every single show. And it seems like that's a group of people that you should be a part of. Am I just saying this because I'm a big fan of yours, or, do you also feel that you should have been a part of that crew as well?
I do, but I also think I forgot what year was that. Do you remember what year that was?
It's like 02, 03.
So yeah, that is basically about the time when I'm starting to wind down.
Right. Okay.
So I've said this many times that, if I would have just stayed in, I probably would have gotten the opportunity in that X division, because it was all the same guys that I'd been working with all these years. Low key, all those guys, AJ, everybody. And then, Daniels being there, everybody was there. So I probably would have been a part of that, but that was about the time when I'm now married. I got my first kid, about to have my second kid, trying to have a second kid. My first kid came in 2003. I'm sorry. We got married in 2002. So family was a lot more important to me than wrestling at that point. So I was kind of tailing off a little bit. So that had a lot to do with the X division stuff. And then now I look at freaking AEW and all the guys are there. I'm like, Jesus Christ, why did I leave? But you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. To be honest with you.
That's cool, bro. And before we get to that part where you're starting to wind down and retire, I've got more stuff to bring up, and I know we'll be going now just over an hour, but look, I want this to be the ultimate Scoot Andrews interview. I want anyone who wants to know about your career to look at this interview and be like, okay, I got the full story with this interview. So
very nice.
I'm crossing my T's and dotting my lowercase J's.
There you go.
So okay, we're scaling back a bit, but more dark matches and TV matches on WWE TV. I wanted to see if there was any little stories here. Late 2002, you worked with Spike Dudley and Tommy Dreamer as they defeat you and somebody that we haven't heard much from in the last few years, Michael Shane, on Heat.
Yes.
There's a backstage promo with you guys talking to Spike about getting an opportunity. You talk a little bit of shit about how small Spike is. Tommy walks in. He's all a bit up in arms about it. And then the tag team match takes place. So, and I thought the tag team match popped, man. The crowd went wild for that finish. Tell me a little bit about that match that you had on Heat.
So, you get there, you sign in, you get paid, you go to catering, you eat. And Michael and I were sitting there eating, and Tommy Dreamer comes up and he pulls up a chair and he goes, "Hey guys, I got an idea for a match tonight and we want to do it with you two." I'm like, all right, this is a rib. Where's the camera? This has got to be a rib, right? Because I don't even know Tommy Dreamer. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So he had pitched for Heat that he wanted to do something with two jobbers, if you will. But he wanted to do it with Spike and do the whole, why don't we have a job because Spike's tiny, and then go right into the, pre-tape that and then go right into the match. So he picked us two, which I was like, that works for me. I'm good. Let's do this. So I get to do my first pre-tape, the WWE, which was cool.
Yeah.
A little nerve-wracking because Vince was in the room.
Wow. Okay. Holy shit.
Nerve-wracking. So I think Dreamer could tell we were a little bit on edge a little bit. So he had the Dudleys there as well. And to break the ice, we did the first take, and then the Dudleys come walking in with chairs and proceed to go at us like they're going to beat us up. And then they pull back and laugh, and they're basically just ribbing us to get us to loosen up.
Okay.
I'll never forget Devon going, "Who's that talking about Spike?" And I was like, oh, dear God, what the hell is happening? That's when I thought it was a true rib. I thought they were going to stop and we're just going to go do what we normally do. But then we went ahead and got it done, and we did the pre-tape, like two takes, I think, and then we go out to do the match. Now, Arn was actually our agent for this match because it was actually on Heat. It wasn't a dark match. It was the first time I was on Heat, this actual show.
Yeah.
So Arn laid it out. We put it together. We did it. Like you said, the freaking crowd was hot. The finish was on point. They popped like crazy. We came through the curtain, and again, Arn approached us, and I think he said something to the fact that was an effing great tag match. That's what I want to see in a tag match. Thank you. And he walks off.
Awesome.
Michael Shane each other, and we're like, holy shit, we might have just gotten a job. And no, we didn't. But the match was freaking phenomenal. I don't think I've ever had a WWE match that had that type of pop at the end. That was fun. That was a freaking blast. And
that's cool, man.
I watch that one every now and then when I want to feel good about myself.
Well, you should, man, because it really was great. And I watched it earlier, and I was like, man, I would have totally had these two come back the next week and do the same thing again with someone else, maybe a Crash Holly or whoever. Sure. If maybe him and Hardcore Holly would team up against you guys and do it again, and then eventually build up to a point where you guys win a match where you get a contract. That's just my wheels spinning. That's what I would have done because I thought you two were very good in that little backstage.
Sure.
Thing. 2003, you worked with Val Venus, which airs on International Sunday Night Heat. Tell me about working with Val Venus.
So this is another one that I thought was going to be a rib, but it was, if you remember, Val used to come out and with his towel on and say whatever,
hello, ladies.
Yeah, that whole thing. And what he wanted me to do was make fun of him. And then, I don't know if you watched the actual match, but as he was doing his spiel, I was cracking up, like slapping my leg, bending over. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. Say, do another one. And then he did like a third or fourth, maybe got to his fifth joke. And when he turned around, I freaking glommed him on top of the head. And then we went into the match. But that was cool because I got to, show some personality and do something different other than just putting my hand up when they call my name and then getting beat. So it was pretty fun. And we had a really good time with that match. He was super easy to work with. He was great. He was actually really good.
Excellent. The next one that I wanted to bring up, I believe, is your debut on Velocity. Or maybe it was a dark match. No, it was on the show because there was commentary, and the commentary was just, I don't know what was going on there, but I think there were some inside jokes between Joey Matthews and Bill DeMott. But you wrestled Johnny the Bull Stamboli, and tell me a little bit about that.
So it was crazy because that was the night that on Raw that the Great Khali was being introduced on TV.
Right. Okay.
So they had a few extra people as extras that they wanted to, and then I don't know if you remember how he was brought out, but he was in a throne and they had a bunch of guys carrying him.
Of course, yeah.
Carrying him in. And I was supposed to do that and not work that night, which would have been great to get paid just to walk out carrying a guy on your back. But Vince flipped out because he wanted all the guys to look the same, and I was the only black guy, and he didn't want a black hand showing when everybody else's hand was white, which was weird. But I was like, okay. So they go, all right, we're going to switch you out with this guy, and you're going to wrestle Johnny the Bull.
Okay.
And then went on to have a pretty decent match. He gave me a lot of offense, and he got a lot of heat when we got backstage for giving me so much offense. But ended up being a decent match. He got in a little bit of trouble, but at the end of the day, it worked out. It was a great match.
Right. Yeah. And I watched that earlier, and I was like, I thought his finishing move was just, he had you up for like a press slam, and then he dropped you onto his shoulder and then gave you an F5. It was, it was like, what the hell? That was a crazy finishing move. I've never seen that move before, but it looked like it was kind of difficult to pull off. But
it was easy. It was actually pretty easy.
That's pulled it off quite well. So
yeah, it's freaking strong as hell. It was easy for him to pull it off.
And, this is a guy that he pressed Rikishi like this. You know what I mean? So if he can do that,
I know. But guys like him like to work with guys like me because I'm 210, 215, so he can throw me around like crazy. I mean, I looked a lot bigger on TV, which worked out, but he could do whatever he wanted to because I wasn't that heavy, which was good. So probably why he was able to try out that new finish on me. He couldn't do that with Rikishi. I can tell you that right now.
Definitely not. Maybe just the press slam.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so we're getting to the tail end here, Scoot. But I couldn't get through this without asking about any road stories where you're traveling to a show, something bad might have happened, or maybe a close call where you might have nearly crashed your car, or something just crazy happening. Do you have any road stories that you can share with your fans out there?
you know, I could share a lot of Hack Meyers road stories, but I'm not quite sure I want to defile his memory in that way. That good God Almighty, I got 100 Hack stories. I mean, you know, there's the obligatory, he got so hammered he peed in my car. That would be one. Then he grabbed my wife's sweater out of the back seat and tried to clean it up before I got back out of the gas station. And then my wife's sweater is ruined. That's the kind of shit that would happen with Hack all the time. There was a story with me and Chris Nelson and Mike Sullivan going to Lafayette, Louisiana for that match that I did with S.A. Rios on I-10 in Florida. And if you know anyone's in America listening to this and they've been on I-10 from Florida to Louisiana, knows all it is 4 lanes of interstate and swamp and whatever. I mean, there's nothingness, right?
Yep.
But I pee. So we pull over, I get out. They start driving off while I'm peeing, and I'm running, trying to stay behind the car because I'm scared to death that, you know, we're going to get pulled over because I had to pee really bad. It was really, really bad. And then they start to take off, and I'm screaming, "Stop, stop. These crocodiles are going to get me." Like, the damn crocodiles in America. But I was freaking out because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was half hammered anyway. So I ran probably a good quarter mile trying to pee at the same time. Outside my car. It was crazy. That was a good one. I did have a close call on an airplane. And God only knows why I would fly from Jacksonville to Tampa. That's just straight up laziness. But I just back then Southwest had a like 35-minute flight from Jacksonville to Tampa. So I took it. On the way back home, there were tornadoes in Orlando when you fly right over to Orlando to get to Tampa. And when I tell you it was 30 minutes of nonstop dropping and spinning and dropping and spinning. By the time I got off the plane, I had held onto the armrest so tightly that I bruised my forearm.
Wow. I can imagine. Yeah.
I knew that was it. I thought it was over. I thought it was it. All I could think about was, man, I wish I had been married. I wasn't married at the time, but I was like, God, I'm never going to be married. I'm never going to have kids. I'm going to die right here. It was
scary, man. I don't care what anyone says. When I feel like bad turbulence in a plane, like it's the worst fear that comes out of me. So I can understand that 100%. I was on a flight to Germany once and I could not handle it. It was extremely upsetting, extremely upsetting. I nearly kissed the ground when I got off the plane that time. But I will say that I normally sleep through turbulence. So for me to be that amped up, it was that bad. I mean, I've been on flights where, you know, we landed and the person next to me was like, God, you believe how turbulent that was? And I'm like, no, I didn't feel that because I was sleeping all the time. Christopher Daniels gave me the best advice you can ever get if you're going to be flying a lot, and that is become one with the hum. Once you become one with the hum, as soon as that plane takes off, you're out. You can't stay awake. I can't even stay awake on a plane now because of him, which is a beautiful thing. I can't wait for that to happen to me. I doubt it ever will, but one of my horrible fears is being on a plane, but I've got to be on a plane sometimes because I want to see the world.
Sure.
Rib stories. Okay, let's see if Scoot Andrews can rustle up a rib story or two for the fans watching.
Do we have to keep this rated PG? Can we go a little risque?
You can say whatever you like. We're from Australia. You can fucking swear all you want. You can do what you can say as you please on the show.
All right, I may not have actually done this rib. I participated in distracting the individual in this rib, but there was. God, I hope this guy's not watching this. there was an individual in Florida who called himself the mailman. But for some reason, the mailman blew a trumpet or a horn or something as he was walking to the ring with his U.S. mail pack. And I think he was an actual mailman, and his mailman outfit, and he go to the ring. I'm not sure what city we were in, but I'm not going to name any of the other cohorts, but I think your friend Mike Moran may have been at this actual show. So I distracted the mailman while one of the old Grizzly vets took his trumpet and basically pulled his pants down and rubbed it in an area that is not necessarily your front parts, but not necessarily in your back, and rubbed it around there for a few minutes and put it right back in the case. And then the mailman was undistracted as I let him go, and his music hit. He took the trumpet and blew it all the way to the ring.
Did he notice?
I don't know if he noticed. But that probably is the hardest I've laughed on a rib in my entire life. And I got ribbed once by the great Steve Kern, Hack, myself, Dawn, Miss Venus, who I told you was my valet at the time, and Mike Sullivan. Drove from Tampa and I moved from Jacksonville to Tampa at this point, and we drove to a show in Jacksonville only to get to the building and there was nobody there. What the hell? So we started making calls. It was a Sunday afternoon show, which should have been a dead giveaway. But we called Buck Quartermain. I don't know if you know who that is.
I've heard the name, yep.
Yeah, Buck and I, another great name in Florida that I spent a lot of time with working against. We call him up and we're like, hey man, where's the show? And all he could do is go, bro, you didn't drive to Jacksonville on April Fool's Day, did you? I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Well, we literally drove from Tampa to Jacksonville, April Fool's Day on a Sunday afternoon for a show that was a rib by Steve Kern.
That's so annoying.
Good time. And you can't be mad at Steve Kern because he's Steve Kern. So it's not like I want to go back and get in Steve Kern's face. So I think Brian Blair had something to do with it as well. So yeah, that was not a good time driving back home after that.
Wonderful.
Actually, no, we did not go home. I'm from Jacksonville. So we actually went and had dinner with some friends in Jacksonville just so our whole trip wasn't wasted. So
yeah, good idea. I think good idea.
So we weren't that bitter, but it was.
You had to make a point out of it at that point. You know, you can't just go back home and.
Definitely.
Look, you mentioned these two words earlier, and I didn't really know what you meant, but I know that there's got to be something behind it. You said something about Jerry Springer.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to let that slip because I knew it was going to come back to bite me. So they had a producer who liked to use professional wrestlers who had not been seen nationally yet.
Okay.
Because I guess maybe we are very good at making it look like we want to fight each other without looking fake, like a lot of those people on Jerry Springer look. So Chris Nelson, who I know I mentioned his name a bunch on here, was the contact. And they had pitched to him a story of him being a John to a prostitute, but the prostitute was my girlfriend. So the name of the show was Baby, I'm a Hooker. So I met the girl on the freaking flight there. Didn't even know her. She was a Hooters girl from here in outside of Tampa in Lakeland. And we go on the show. We get there. We get first class treatment. And I will say Jerry treats the guests on his show first class. Limo, anywhere we wanted to go. You get this fake Monopoly money with Jerry Springer's face on it, and it's good for pretty much every restaurant in downtown Chicago. And obviously, they take it out of the Springer budget, but if you give them $50 worth of Jerry bucks and it pays for $50 worth of food. So
wow, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
yep.
Good time. So we're sitting there, and Chris's buddy flew himself there just so he could come watch. Now, this buddy looked a lot like Charles Manson. Not a nice guy, but he looked like Charles Manson. He looked just like him. He looked crazy. So we're sitting there getting hammered, eating lobster on Jerry and having a good time. And we're like, man, we need to get him in the show. How can we get him in the show? So after an hour or two of just getting hammered and having a good time, we decided, you know what? He ought to be her pimp. But he can also be her stepbrother. And now she was a white girl, so he can also be a racist brother pimp. So we get on the phone with the producer and we pitch it, and she goes, "Hell yeah, let's do that." So he ends up getting booked. So they send her out. She's a nervous wreck. I remember sitting behind the door that you walk through to get to the stage, which is basically just a prop. It's not really a door. I didn't know that. Kind of made me mad that they use that door. Anyway, I'm sitting behind the door, and the producer comes up and goes, "Listen, she's a nervous wreck. We're gonna probably have to bring you out early to like take over because I'm not sure she's gonna be able to pull this off." I'm like, "Whatever, dude. Whatever you need, we'll get through it." And we pretty much ad-libbed the whole thing. I'm like, "We'll get through it." So I'm sitting there waiting for them to call me out early, and I can't really hear what she's saying and what she's doing, but all I can hear is the crowd, going, "Jerry, Jerry." And then next thing you know, I hear the crowd going, "Whore, whore." And then I hear, "You're a whore." I'm like, what in the hell is going on? So I get out there, and she's got these people frothing at the mouth. I don't know what at the point in time, I didn't know what she did. Obviously, I've seen the tape now. But she went out there and played a straight up heel and got over like crazy. So when I came out, and she was cute. Well, they were expecting me to be like some, typical Jerry Springer looking dude that would come out on Jerry Springer. Well, I came out, dressed nice, pretty muscular at the time. I mean, I walk out and the crowd goes, "Oh!" And then all of a sudden, I was the big baby face. They couldn't, there were women in the crowd crying. It was so bad. It was that bad. Actually, before I came out, a girl charged the stage to beat her ass. That's how much of a heel she was being.
Wow.
So even those guys had to tackle that woman to the floor and carry her out. So I come out, I'm the huge baby face now. So we had talked all night about the triggers we were going to say to each other to get each other to flip out. And at one point, I wanted to absolutely lose my mind, right? So we're trying to come up with what Chris could say to me at the time. And I was like, well, if you drop an N-bomb, they're just going to freaking bleep it out. It's not going to have any effect. If you call me anything bad, they're going to bleep it out. If you cuss, they're going to bleep it out. I go, we got to come up with something that you can call me that they won't bleep out that would make me lose my crap, right? So over that course of drinking, I was like, you know what? You got to call me a porch monkey. And he goes, "Man, I'm not calling you that on TV." I'm like, "Bro, trust me. Call me porch monkey." So we get to the point. Now, granted, we're only supposed to be 4 segments, and we got the crowd going so well. We bumped 3 other sets of people that are supposed to be coming on because they're like, "Keep this going. Keep this going." We end up going 9 segments.
Wow. Oh, my fucking God.
So we get to the payoff, and he goes, "You know what? While you're in the gym working and pumping your muscles up, I'm at your house pumping something else up, you freaking porch monkey." And I lost my crap.
Amazing.
Steve tackles me. I'm crawling, like trying to get to this guy. My shirt's coming undone. I'm frothing at the mouth. I can't stop. They finally get me back in my seat. Steve does not even know we're workers. He's like, got his hand on my shoulder going, "Man, it's okay. It's okay. She ain't worth it, bro. She ain't worth it." Wow, we got Steve work. This is awesome. So every time that show was played on as a rerun, we made Talk Soup every single time.
Wow.
And I don't know if you remember, Talk Soup always showed the best segments of the day.
Yeah.
We never not made Talk Soup when they played that episode. It was a freaking blast.
That's great. Oh man, I had no idea. Now I'm gonna find this after this interview.
You can't find it. It's pre-digital. I got the only VHS copy of it right here, and I ain't showing it to nobody.
It's nowhere. It can't be found anywhere.
cannot be found anywhere. I looked. It is not out there. It was 6 months before my first WWE match, which was in '99, I think. So it was probably mid '98, and I mean there was no digital back then. Everything was on VHS. It was all on tape.
Right. Wow. Well, I mean, geez, if they saw that tape, they might have been like, "We need this guy involved in the Attitude Era."
Well, what's crazy is I walk into catering for that very first match in Jacksonville, and Big Show sees me, and I did not know that they played the rerun the night before Monday Night Raw, which is where we were. So I walk in, and freaking Big Show jumps up and goes, "That dude was on Springer last night." I'm like, oh my God. All our workers returned. I'm like, oh. It's my first time in the damn locker room, and now I'm the Springer guy, which is crazy.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. So every time I would work for WWE, God almighty, what's his name? Peanut Head, black guy, manager. Used to be a referee.
Oh,
Teddy Long.
Teddy Long. Yeah.
Every time I would see Teddy Long, Teddy would be like, "Man, my wife hates you. Now she knows Springer's fake. Man, I ain't never gonna live this down because of you." And I mean, even to this day, he still busts my chops about that shit. I have a hard time with names, man. I've had a lot of concussions, so sometimes the face is right there. I can't remember that. But yeah, cool, Teddy was devastated when he found out it was the word.
I'm a little devastated right now. I wasn't sure whether or not either way. I guess I haven't.
There were real pimps.
There were real ones, yeah, but
like they mix them in. It's not all one or the other. Some are fake, some are.
Okay, well, before I get to ask you why you retired in 2005, I wanted to ask you about working with Antonio Banks, which for those out there may know right now is the head honcho of the Hurt Business, MVP right now, doing the best work of his career. Who would have thought in 2021 that would be happening for him? But he's killing it every single night now. And there's a proof in the pudding that he's always been great, but you worked with him back in the day in, 04, 05. Tell me a little bit about working with MVP.
Oh, it was unbelievable, man. We pitched to Ron Nemi at IPW that we wanted to do black tag team. And we were going to get over in all these little small redneck towns in Florida by, making fun of white people, right? So we decided we were going to be called NWA, and yes, that N stands for what you think it is, with an attitude. And then we had SoCal Val. I don't know if you know SoCal Val. And Val, really good friend. She was our valet, and we basically treated her like crap, right? It was all the work, obviously, but we would do little things like in the middle of our promo, and we'd tell her to act like she was, tired, or she would be in the corner with her head down. And we would do little stuff like in the middle of the promo, "Val, what's wrong with you?" And she would go, "I think I have jungle fever." And oh my God, we were good. Obviously, you got to think about these redneck towns that we were in Florida, getting booed out of the building. It was unbelievable.
That's great.
So we got to have some fun with that. And then later on, as I'm about to transition out of the business, I did some one-on-one versus him for FIP here in Florida. But that guy, man, even when he didn't know what he was doing, he was still one of the best on the card every single night. Back in the day, he tagged with a guy called a Punisher. And they were probably the most over tag team I've ever seen in Florida back in the day. He's just a solid dude, man. He's not anybody you want to mess with either, but he is a solid dude. I'm glad he was on my side every time. But we still talk from here to there, man. I saw him on that that thing I told you about, Gabe Sapolsky. They did one on him, traveling with him and when he was out of WWE before he went back. Right. And he's now got a kid that, the biggest thing for him, and a lot of people may not know this if they haven't seen any interviews with him recently, but his biggest driver right now is the fact that his kid gets to watch him work on TV and gets to see MVP, and when daddy comes home, they watch MVP together. So his son's already kind of figured out that, my dad is MVP, but he's still dad. But when he's on TV, he's MVP. And he's like, it was so cool. And I think he recently had him at a pay-per-view for the first time.
Oh,
And
wow. That's great.
he knows that was the biggest night of his life for his kid to look up and see the dad in the ring. I'm like, man, that is cool. That is super cool. I have 2 girls. They're both teenagers now. And every time I'll do a spot show here, they don't even want to come anywhere near their arena to watch me. Hey, are you crazy? But yeah, his kid is what's driving him right now. And I think that's why he's doing his best work, because he's doing everything for the kid to actually see his dad do well. So
yeah. Absolutely, man. It's like, I think he was only supposed to be brought in for the Rumble and maybe the night after the Rumble where he wrestled Ray. And
This is
I
true.
think he had just done, this is just, I didn't read anything. I never heard anything, but my point of view is he must have just done such a good job. And they're like, oh, we've got to bring him in. And then things snowball and all of a sudden he's a part of the biggest thing that's on television right now in wrestling. So
I do believe that is exactly what happened. We actually texted during, like, right after the Rumble. And I was like, dude, what the hell are you doing back on TV? And he's like, man, hey, if it's 1 shot or 2 shots, I got to take them. So that tells me that it was like 1 or 2 shots and he was going to be back home. And he did so well. They kept him on and now he's killing it.
yeah.
Now he's a freaking world champion, I guess. I didn't even know freaking Lashley won the title until I was on Twitter this morning. I'm like, what the hell? Didn't even know that.
He's got the belt. I think they got the tag belts too. And it's like, I bet you it's this. They put him on TV and they'll realize, damn, I think we kind of forgot how good he is. And we should have brought him back years ago. Why didn't we bring him back years ago? We're going to have to bring him in now because he's obviously a valuable part of the show right now. And, you know,
nobody, even back in the day, he was as good on a stick as he is now. And all he's being is himself, which makes it easy when you're being yourself. Like, you know, Steve Austin was himself. That's why it was so easy for him to be that character.
Yeah.
You can tell it's not forced. But he is just unbelievable on the stick. And I think that is what has carried him, along with his work, his ability to work. You know, some people are good on stick and suck in the ring. Some people are great in the ring and suck on the stick. He is very good on both. And I think that is why you're starting to see him. And I remember when he was at NXT and he was trying to develop a character and he actually pitched that MVP thing to me. And I was like, I don't know, bro. I don't know if Vince will like that. And here he is all these years later. Good thing he didn't listen to me.
Good, bro. Yeah. And you know what? Like, he deserves it. He deserves it.
He does. He absolutely does.
Okay, the big question, you've already alluded to it, but why did you decide to retire in 2000?
Family. I had my first kid, a girl. She was a girl, and you know, wrestlers are usually punished for all their bad deeds. So God gave me a second girl. But you know what? I just heard all the stories and all the things of all the boys who worked all the time and missed their kids, absolutely missed their kids growing up, missed everything. And I did not want to be that guy. You know, I grew up with a single mom. I did not want my kids to grow up with just their mom and me, you know, in and out all the time. So that was the driving force. The wife basically told me I didn't have a choice. You know, the oldest one was starting to do gymnastics, and you know, those are on the weekends, and I was not going to miss any.
Yeah, man, you want to see that stuff. You want to see that stuff, not through like a phone that recorded it. You want to see it. Yeah.
And I just remember, man, just being a kid, and my mother didn't miss one little league football game, one high school football game. I think the first time she missed a football game that I played in was when I was away at college. So I wanted to do the same thing for my kids. And to this day, you know, they're both high school age. The oldest is going to college next year. She's on one of the number one all-star competitive cheerleading teams in the world, called Brandon Senior Black.
Wow.
And I don't miss, you know, we have to divide and conquer because my youngest is on a super competitive all-star soccer team. So the wife typically flies to the cheer events, and I watch those on Varsity TV, which is the live streaming service. But I don't miss a soccer game, and if she's competing in Orlando or in locally, I don't miss anything. So I did not want to be that guy, and I just picked family over wrestling. And I get to scratch. I still get to scratch that itch every now and then, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade that time with these kids for a TV contract anywhere. Would not trade it for any of that stuff. So
That's good, bro. No, props to you. And you already had yourself set up in life, having something to fall back on, which was your main source at the time as well, your job. So it's great that you've done that and you've been, there for your kids and your family. So much props to you. Another great moment is the East Coast Wrestling Association putting you in their Hall of Fame. So that's nice for you. Tell me a little bit about how that went and what took place.
So after Super 8, I guess Kettner decided that, I was over enough with his crowd that he was going to continue to bring me back. And then he ended up putting the ECWA title on me for a year and a half, I think, maybe a little bit less. And I got to work, obviously, Christopher Daniels, Low Key, American Dragon, Daniel Bryan, Mean Street Posse, Simon Diamond, all these guys, man. So it was a good run with those guys. Ended up finally losing the strap to Prince Nana from the Embassy. But, that year and a half, I was kind of quasi baby. I was kind of gray area. It depended on who I was working, whether I was heel or babyface. I could go either way. And I think that's why I kept the strap for so long. And then, being gone for a while, and then him just calling out and asking if I wanted to come back up to be inducted. And I looked at all the people that were already in. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, went up, man. They played this cool highlight video. Got to make a speech. The crowd gave me a standing ovation, man. It was one of the highlights.
That's lovely, man. That's really nice that someone who worked their ass off for all these years got the opportunity to be celebrated. In an area that you'd done so much work in. So to me, that feels good to know that you had that moment, my friend.
Absolutely.
So I know you've wrestled out every now and then since then. It's always difficult. You leave the business, but you miss that rush of being in front of the audience. You miss being creative. You miss coming up with the stuff that you've come up with for years, where you're working on a match backstage with the guy that you're about to get in the ring with. Sure. That process is always something that's, it's ingrained in you. So, maybe you haven't done it as much, but, tell everyone out there, how many times have you been working since 2005? Is it once a year? Is it a couple times a year? What is it that Scoot Andrews does?
It's been about once a year, once every 2 years. Most recently, 2 years ago, Ron Nemi pitched an idea of doing a show with a lot of the Evolve guys versus the old IPW guys. So the show was actually called Days of Future Past. And it was an old guy versus a new guy, or old tag team versus a new tag team.
All right.
Somehow I got roped into being one of the only singles matches on this card. I'm 53, so I was 51 at the time, and I had to go one-on-one with Austin Theory.
Shit.
So now, needless to say, I knew this was going to be a tall task, so I literally started training for this thing like 8 months prior. I really, really, really trained hard. I was at the ring 3 days a week at the WWN training center out in Pinellas, the guys that are kind of behind Evolve. Then I would go to Jay Lethal's school whenever that one was closed and work with him and his students. I work with, Jay is a good friend of mine. He always jokes every time he sees me that his dad is my biggest fan. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Come on. You're old and you're telling me your dad is my biggest fan. That's a compliment, but it's really not. But, I put in a lot of time to get ready for that match. And I didn't know what to expect. I've seen a lot of videos of the kid, and he looked like $1 million. But he reminded me of a young Christopher Daniels, just with his mind in the ring. His mind far exceeds his years. I let him call the whole match because I can't even. It's really hard when you're not doing it all the time to call a match because you forget. I mean, Hack told me this was going to happen, and I told him he was crazy. But he goes, at some point in your career, you're going to forget more wrestling than you know. You're going to forget more than you know. So I'm at the schools training, trying to get ready for this thing, and I can't even put spots together. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I used to be able to do this like in my sleep.
Yeah.
So we get to the show, and I'm like, dude, look, you call the match. Let's do this. So he called it. Great match. I've been told it's the best match on the show. But it was a blast. And now look at it. I knew he was going to make it, but Jesus, I didn't know it was going to be this quick. But that kid is an unbelievable talent, man. He's I would say he's more like a savant in music. Like a 12-year-old kid who's never seen a piano, he can get up there and play Beethoven just by looking at the keys. That's what that guy in the ring. It was unbelievable. I was blown away.
Cool, man.
I texted him. I DM'd him on Twitter as soon as that match was over, and I was like, "Thank you for taking care of an old man, but thank you for a great match." And he's like, "Oh, Scoot, pleasure's all mine, dude. I'm in awe." I'm like, "No, bro, I'm in awe. That was an awesome match." So glad to see he's doing well. And I mean, he's killing it. So hopefully, he'll be a WWE champion one day. Like I said, I worked that dude when I was 51.
Yeah, that would be great, man. Would you say that is potentially your last match, or would there be something else that could convince you to do another one?
So after that match, I still work out, obviously, but I just did not see myself training that hard again for a match. And I don't want to go into a match not able to do it the way I'm capable. A lot of the older guys are like, man, just go in there and have fun, take it easy. But I just can't go in. If someone came to see me, I don't want to go out there and not give them my all. And if I can't give them my all, I don't want to do it. So Ron was pushing hard. WrestleMania weekend's coming up here in April, and he's pushing for this no hold barred promotion that he's associated with. He keeps telling me all these people are finding me on YouTube and they want me on the show, blah, blah, blah. I think he's just blowing smoke to get me on the show. But pushing. Probably like, listen, Ron, first of all, I'm coaching high school football. My kids are full swing in their sports. I work full time. I literally just don't have the time, but I was like, I will manage. I will guest referee. I'll do whatever you want, but I'm not going to do a match. So he took that and ran with it already. Already put out a poster that making an appearance, Black Nature Boys. So I guess I'm managing somebody. I don't know what we're going to do there, but I will be a part of WrestleMania week as a manager, but the boots are gone, man. I sold them. I got rid of them. So I'm done.
Good, bro. Good. That's great. Look, your last match was against a phenomenal athlete and performer. So, that's great, dude. And you can look back and have no regrets on how that ended. And even if you dip your foot in here and there as a manager or being a part of shows, those younger people will certainly, it will help them getting the knowledge from you and talking to you just for a 5-minute conversation. I'm sure will help them out.
Absolutely, man. And it was very crazy because backstage at that show, or maybe it was another one. That was not the last one. I take that back. I did do a tag team match. But Connor from I forgot what their name was.
The Ascension.
The Ascension, yeah. I walked into the locker room. And I put my bag down. I'm walking around, saying hello to everyone. And I'll walk up to him. He's like, "Oh my God, dude, I love watching you when I was a kid." I'm like, "Oh God, Jesus." I hate that. I mean, it was great, but I'm like, dude, you're like on TV now, and you're telling me you like watching me when you were a kid. That is awesome. I feel old now. I'm going to go outside and take my Geritol. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the name Billy Fives, because that is who I have done a lot of my post-retirement stuff against.
Okay.
And we kind of made a pact that the only way we would do a show is if it was against each other, and we held firmly on that for a long time. So I would probably say 4 or 5, maybe 6 times we worked each other since then. But he is another one of those friendships that I forged out of this business that has lasted through this all the way till now. And I don't know if you know or familiar with his work at all, but Billy is one hell of a talent. He was trained by Rusty Brooks, who just passed away. So maybe I'm pitching him to be on your show maybe one day. Just saying.
Of course.
But yeah, Billy and I go way, way back to the time when I didn't even know what the hell I was doing, and we were working each other, and neither one of us really knew what the hell we were doing, but we pull it off somehow. But yeah, him and I did a lot of stuff together in this post-retirement time, and Sullivan and I did a couple too as well. But yeah, I didn't want to get through this podcast without giving Billy some time.
No, cool, man, awesome. No, if you wanted to put that out there, then I appreciate it. If this is the ultimate Scoot Andrews interview, then
absolutely
the floor is yours to tell me. So yep, I don't know of him, but I will do some looking into his career, and I'd be happy to talk to him, because I'm sure if you vouch for him, it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, he actually did the Super 8 the year after I did it, and then him and I did a ladder match for the ECWA title in Delaware probably a year after that. So I think he was one of the last matches I had before I dropped the strap to Prince Nana. So
okay, cool.
He's really
any regrets? Anything you would like to change from your time in the professional wrestling business?
Not a thing. Yes. Not a thing.
That's what I like to hear.
Absolutely.
So many people have all these regrets, and I think living with regret is a bad thing. So if you don't have them,
let me change that. I have a small one.
Oh, here we go.
I wish I had started in the business at a younger age. By the time I actually broke in, I was near 30 years old. I was late 20s.
Right.
I do think that was a factor in never being signed, because I was already 30 years old by the time I'd done WWE. I think if I had been in my 20s, things may have ended up a little bit differently. But the caveat there is I wouldn't have the life that I have now with my family if I had broken in earlier. So
exactly,
no regrets. No regrets.
Exactly, bro. If you broke in earlier, live, the butterfly effect, different things would have happened, and you might not have met your wife. You might not have the kids you have now. So
absolutely.
Let's settle on no regrets, because I think your family that defines you and what you are now. That means the most. So absolutely. Man. Excellent, bro. Before we get to 5-second frenzy, Scoot Andrews, do you want to plug anything that you're doing right now? Let everyone know where to find you on your social media, if you want them to find you.
Absolutely.
And anything that you want to plug of what you're doing in life right now.
So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at BNB Scoot Andrews. Follow me. I'll follow you back, and you can DM me, post whatever you want to do, but I will respond. Crazy enough, lately I've been getting a lot of mail from people with pictures that they won't sign. I'm not quite sure how they found my address, which is a little scary.
That is weird. Yeah.
I even had a guy in Ireland send me a little card to sign, which is cool. So that's cool. But yeah, currently what I'm doing now, man, is just working and coaching high school football at Wiregrass Ranch High School here in Tampa, Florida. And just following these girls and making sure that they are the best they can be. Got a oldest who is making a decision on what college to go to, and thinking it's going to be Florida State. So hopefully that happens. And the youngest is trying to get a scholarship playing soccer. So that is my life right now, is those two, and my wife and I getting them and chasing them and doing whatever they need for us to do. So that's what we're doing.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. And I really appreciate your time on the show here tonight. But we can't finish it off until we get through 5 Second Frenzy. And Scoot
Okay.
Andrews, 5 Second Frenzy. It's about 10 to 12 quick fire questions. There are a couple about wrestling, but they're mostly about other things in life, just to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Here we go. Number 1 question, your favorite wrestler.
Ric Flair.
I saw that one coming. Your favorite opponent over the years?
Christopher Daniels.
I saw that one coming too. All right. I'm 2 out of 2. Favorite match that you've ever had? I know this is a tough one for a lot of people to answer.
Favorite match I've ever had would probably be the tag match against the Strong Brothers with Mike Sullivan.
Yep. Cool. Your favorite book?
It's Your Ship by, where the hell is it? I have it right here, actually.
Good catch.
That was a good catch. You see that?
Yeah.
It's Your Ship by Michael Abrashoff.
Okay.
Right. He's a Navy
Excellent.
guy who pushed against all the norms and ended up changing the strategy of the way the Navy operates just by thinking differently. So I use a lot of the concepts out of that book with my kids and coaching and work in my job and the people that work for me. So my favorite book is It's Your Ship.
Excellent. So anyone out there who needs help in those areas of your life, read that book. It's obviously helpful. Favorite TV show?
Sanford and Son.
Very nice. Favorite film?
Favorite film is Coming to America. With a slightly ahead of Forrest Gump. Those two are my favorites.
Very nice. Yeah, no, Coming to America. I know that there's a second one coming out. I really hope that they don't mess this up. I hope it's just.
I do too. It's going to kill me.
It's tough, bro. I loved Zoolander, and then when they brought out Zoolander 2, hopefully,
yeah,
a repeat performance of that. Favorite musical artist?
Oh my God. Wow, that's tough. Public Enemy.
Nice, bro. Very cool. Favorite food?
Steak.
We get steak a lot. On the show. Steak and pizza are probably the most
Yes, sir.
popular with pro wrestlers. Favorite place to eat on the road?
Outback.
We get Outback. We get Cracker Barrel. We get Waffle House. Those three.
Well,
again.
favorite place to eat on the road after drinking all night would be Waffle House.
Okay. Awesome. We don't have Waffle House in Australia, so one day when I'm over there.
God, that's a travesty.
It is. It's a travesty. Favorite alcoholic beverage?
That had recently changed to bourbon. It used to be vodka club soda with a lime, but now it is just straight bourbon.
Straight bourbon. That's hardcore, bro. That's
on the rocks.
On the rocks. Okay, well, still that's pretty cool. I'm still yet to get myself to the point where straight liquor on ice, I can do that. I could do red wine, I could do beer, but I need to mix things with Coke, unfortunately. Anyway, This isn't about me. This is about you. Second last one here for 5 Second Frenzy. Scoot Andrews is the naughtiest one of 5 Second Frenzy. Your favorite female body part?
But easy.
Yeah,
not even close. Not even close.
A lot of wrestlers are ass men, bro. So
yes,
you got a lot of company there. And the final one, Scoot Andrews, your favorite curse word?
Damn it, which is not really a cuss word, but I say
it's
it a lot.
In the 1940s. It was quite offensive to say damn or damn it. But no worries, bro. That's the end of 5 Second Frenzy, and I just want to say, hey, I appreciate the fact that you took the time to talk to me here today and tonight for me. It's now 1 a.m, and I've got this much left of a bottle of wine. So I've had a good time when I've had this much to drink within the space of 2 hours. But Scoot Andrews, man, you're a wrestling legend there in Florida in the ECWA. All the companies you wrestle for down there, man. Everyone knows you there. Everyone loves you. And I want you to know, fuck this guy from Ireland, okay? I live in Australia. I'm in a different hemisphere. I'm the furthest fan away that you have. I want to be numero uno. That's me. I'm the number one longest far journey fan that you've got. And I want you to know, from Perth, Western Australia, the most isolated city in the world, that someone here appreciated you and your work back in the day.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. And just glad, I'm just glad that my name is still known. That's the only thing I can say, man. It's humbling.
No worries, my friend. And I just, again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, man. I had a blast.
Thanks, Scoot.
And I will let Mike Moran know I had a blast. He told me that it was going to be fun. I was like, I'll let you know, man. I'll let you know.
He's a very good friend of the show, and he always helps me out with interviews now. We've become very good friends. We talk almost every day. So when I told him that I was getting you on the show, he was like, oh, that's great. Like, I can't wait to watch that. So, yeah, he's been helpful. And again, Scoot, thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Have a great day. Well, I guess you're going to have a great night. I'm going to have a great day.
Thanks, bro. And thank you to everyone out there for watching the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network in conjunction with Blue Wire Hustle. I am your host, Karlifornia, along with my new friend, Scoot Andrews, and we will see you next time. Thank you.